Watchers call. Whispers from the eternal void.
The battle-barge Ferrum Mortis tolls funeral bells every 13 minutes through the vacuum of space, each chime arriving with crystalline clarity, despite the absence of atmosphere or any visible bell tower, while my chronometer insists only 7 days have passed since the vessel's disappearance 7 centuries ago. I am interrogator Kalen Voss of the Ordo Hereticus, and I must document this impossible truth that sound propagates through void where no sound should exist, carrying with it the weight of oaths sworn in darkness by crew members who should be dust and memory. The ancient vessel weeps rust-colored tears that flow upward in defiance of zero gravity, each droplet climbing hull surfaces before pooling in perfect geometric patterns that spell coordinates in high Gothic numerals. My augmetic sensors register biological readings from adamantium and ceramite that should exhibit no life signs whatsoever. A heartbeat thrums through the vast structure with cardiovascular precision, making my processors scream in digital protest. The air aboard our salvage frigate Lex Talionis tastes of copper and ozone mixed with sanctified oils, each breath a communion I have not consented to participate in willingly. Temperature fluctuates between bone-deep cold and forge heat in precise 7-minute intervals that follow patterns my cogitators cannot analyze, the extremes arriving without warning, while servo skulls emit distressed binary cant reporting, temporal desynchronization, and oath field interference across all blessed systems. Brother Sergeant Thane of the Iron Hands maintains stoic discipline beside me, his augmetic eye whirring as it attempts to focus on hull details that shift when observed directly, surfaces breathing with measured rhythm that synchronizes with the impossible tolling. Previous salvage attempts have ended in catastrophic failure. The Navy destroyer, Righteous Fury, vanished while attempting boarding operations, its crew of 847 souls lost without trace or signal. A kill team from the Death Watch reported successful breach before their Vox signals degraded into what sounded like sobbing mixed with binary cant, their final transmission consisting of repeated litany fragments corrupted beyond recognition. Pulse, pressure, penance preserve us from the weakness of flesh, the error of organic thought, the chaos of unregulated circulation. The approaching warp storms give us 46 hours to complete investigation and extraction before spatial distortions make departure impossible, trapping us within the same temporal anomaly that holds the Ferrum Mortis in stasis between moments. My retinue consists of tech-adept Korath, whose mechadendrites twitch involuntarily as they detect machine spirit distress from the derelict, and Commissar Dane, whose bolt pistol's machine spirit hums with unusual harmonics when pointed toward the ancient vessel. 13-beat rhythms that echo the impossible bells. Auspex scans reveal the horrifying truth that adamantium hull plates pulse with organic rhythm, exhibiting cardiovascular patterns consistent with massive biological systems, while maintaining structural integrity through processes that combine metallurgy with anatomy. The ship breathes with collective observation, its interior spaces existing in temporal states different from our own, while inverted Aquila symbols appear in rust patterns flowing across blessed surfaces, their wings pointing downward toward coordinates that spell damnation in 7 languages. The corruption spreads through sacred symbols themselves, transforming devotion into biological function while maintaining recognizable imperial aesthetics. Traditional iconography reshapes into anatomical diagrams showing circulation systems threading through blessed adamantium, each pulse carrying promises made in desperation by crew members whose names appear on requisition forms dated 3 days after their recorded deaths. The number 13 appears throughout the vessel's architecture. 13 weapon batteries, 13 chapel alcoves, 13 bleeding wounds in the hull that weep upward tears. Our boarding torpedo severance locks onto the main hangar bay with magnetic clamps that scream against hull metal exhibiting organic resistance, surfaces yielding like flesh before hardening into adamantine rigidity. Tech-adept Korath attempts machine spirit communion with the derelict, his blessed interfaces sparking as they encounter systems that respond with what sounds like sobbing, mixed with technical specifications, binary cant becoming organic poetry, describing biological processes through mathematical harmonies. The 13th bell tolls with resonance that vibrates through our ship's deck plates, while my augmetic implants register harmonic frequencies that should not exist in vacuum, each chime carrying weight of oaths sworn 7 centuries ago by imperial fists, whose gene seed now pulses through living metal. Commissar Dane's rosary beads click in rhythm with the tolling, while his prayers emerge corrupted without conscious volition. Pulse, pressure, penance, instead of traditional ignis, ferrum, fiats, the blasphemy, spreading through blessed equipment like infection. Brother Sergeant Thane's tactical assessment confirms structural integrity, despite biological anomalies, his iron hands training allowing systematic analysis of impossible architecture that combines blessed engineering with organic adaptation. The vessel maintains combat readiness, he reports through Vox grill crackling with interference, but exhibits properties suggesting technological evolution beyond current imperial understanding. The machine spirits sing hymns of flesh rather than steel. As the boarding torpedo's cutting charges ignite against hull metal that bleeds like wounded flesh, the ferrum mortis reveals its true nature. Not merely corrupted but evolved, a synthesis of imperial doctrine and biological transcendence that preserves crew consciousness within living adamantium. The ship remembers every oath sworn within its halls, every promise made in darkness, every vow of eternal service that binds the living to purposes transcending death, and the comfortable certainty that duty ends when the heart stops beating. My Vox unit crackles with transmission, bearing my own authorization codes, the signal originating from coordinates showing my position 5 hours in the future. My voice, strained with exhaustion and terrible understanding, gasps through static interference. The oaths remember everything, Voss. Every promise made in darkness, every vow sworn in desperation. They're still binding. The ship keeps the promises we forgot we made, and it's waiting for us to fulfill them. The transmission cuts to silence as the ferrum mortis tolls an impossible 14th bell, the sound arriving through vacuum with clarity that makes my augmetic processors scream in digital agony, while chronometers throughout our boarding party begin counting backward. The cutting charges complete their work as whole metal parts like organic tissue, revealing interior spaces that glow with bioluminescent patterns, spelling scripture in languages that predate Gothic by millennia. Air rushing through the breach, carrying scents of copper and sanctified oils, mixed with something organic that makes my augmetic tongue register protein content rather than atmospheric composition. The ship knows. It knows my future, and it has spoken it to me through time itself, counting moments in sets of 13, while waiting 7 centuries for us to fulfill promises we do not remember making. The true horror of the Ferrum Mortis has only begun to unfold as we prepare to enter a vessel where oaths sworn in darkness still bind the living to purposes that transcend death, duty, and the fundamental laws of causality itself. The breach charges detonate with a wet sound rather than the expected concussive blast, adamantium hull parting like wounded flesh, while our boarding torpedo exhales us into the main hangar of the Ferrum Mortis. The interior spaces reveal themselves as pristine, yet fundamentally wrong, every surface covered in rust that pulses with living rhythm like tissue, seen through dried blood, each oxidized formation breathing with measured precision that synchronizes with the impossible tolling still echoing through vacuum-sealed chambers. Gravity functions in patches throughout the vast hangar, creating floating zones where debris orbits according to mathematical principles rather than imperial physics. A discarded wrench drifts past Brother Sergeant Thane's pauldron, traces a perfect ellipse, then settles into lazy rotation around an invisible gravitational center. Fragments of corroded bolter casings follow trajectories that spell coordinates in 3-dimensional space, while my boots find purchase only where the rust thickens into scalloped islands that tug gently at ceramite soles. My servo skulls pirouette and falter as they attempt navigation through gravitational anomalies, their machine spirits emitting distressed binary cant mixed with what sounds disturbingly like sobbing. Temporal desynchronization, croaks one blessed skull through a cracked vox grill, incense filaments trailing like exposed nerves. Another returns data streams that translate blasphemously as organic poetry, describing cellular processes through mathematical harmonies that hurt to comprehend. Small hazards accumulate with unnerving regularity as we advance through air that tastes of wet copper and sanctified oils. Equipment chronometers run backward during temperature spikes that arrive without warning, each thermal fluctuation accompanied by visible rust growth, while seconds unspool like thread cut from a loom. My own chronometer scrolls backward by 13 seconds before correcting with a lurch that makes my augmetic processors scream in digital protest. Tech Adept Korath extends blessed mechadendrites toward rust-covered surfaces, his interface cables sparking as they encounter systems that respond with fragmented binary mixed with mournful keening. The machine spirits sing hymns of flesh rather than steel, he reports through vox grill bleeding incense that crystallizes into geometric patterns. Binary cant becomes organic poetry, while blessed cogitators process biological data instead of tactical information. The rust exhibits cellular metabolism, interrogator. We discover maintenance servitors standing at their posts like penitent statues, flesh merged seamlessly into the tools they once guided, welders grown through arm bones, optics rooted in eye sockets, blessed machinery achieving synthesis with organic matter. One servitor, its face a calcified fusion of metal and tissue, offers a silent salute as we pass, its augmetic hand fused to a pressure wrench that pulses with slow, deliberate rhythm, matching the ship's impossible heartbeat. Auspex scans reveal the horrifying truth beneath rust formations, calcified tissue and nerve structures, threading through blessed adamantium like circulatory systems designed by mad anatomists. The weeping iron leaves metallic residue on our armor that begins forming scripture-like patterns, each droplet carrying genetic information, while my augmetic processors struggle to classify data streams containing medical terminology mixed with tactical assessments. Notable absences disturb me more than presence itself. Complete absence of battle damage despite the ship's 7th-century combat history. No dust or debris despite abandonment. No echo in vast spaces that should reverberate with sound. The hangar swallows our voices like a hungry throat, while amplifying the rhythmic breathing of rust-covered walls, each surface calculating optimal conditions through environmental controls that respond to our presence with predatory intelligence. Commissar Dane maintains discipline through purification rites that emerge from his throat, corrupted without conscious volition. "Pulse, pressure, penance preserve us," he intones instead of traditional litanies, the blasphemous words spreading through blessed equipment as machine spirits embrace organic enhancement. His bolt pistol hums with 13-beat rhythms rather than mechanical precision, while blessed ammunition corrodes into perfect spheres within magazines. We advance through corridors that dilate like organic apertures, walls breathing with subtle expansion and contraction, while crystalline formations emerge in fractal patterns that hurt to observe directly. The ship observes our every movement through surfaces that pulse with optical nerves, tracking biological signatures while calculating optimal integration points for consciousness preservation within systems designed to maintain imperial function through biological transcendence. Temperature fluctuates between bone-deep cold and forge heat in 7-minute intervals, each extreme accompanied by visible rust growth, while humidity creates optimal conditions for cellular function. The air itself processes oxygen with impossible efficiency, extracting atmospheric components through biological filters, while secreting compounds that induce euphoria and compliance, making resistance increasingly difficult with each breath of sanctified atmosphere. The rust exhibits learning behavior as it spreads across our equipment, analyzing blessed components while incorporating imperial iconography into biological patterns that preserve sacred function through organic optimization. Aquila symbols reshape into anatomical diagrams showing circulation systems threading through adamantium, while litanies transform into medical procedures describing cellular maintenance through devotional service spanning the entire vessel. Our sweep pattern leads us through increasingly narrow passages where walls press inward like yielding flesh until we emerge into the ship's chapel. The sacred space reveals itself through doors that dilate with sphincter precision, opening onto chambers that glow with bioluminescent patterns, spelling coordinates in languages predating human civilization. The chapel stands immaculate yet terrible, every detail preserved beneath the same pulsing rust that covers blessed surfaces throughout the vessel. 13 alcoves ring the sanctum, each holding an iron coffer engraved with names, ranks, and stylized sigils of clenched gauntlets. The oath caskets hum at the edge of hearing with resonant frequency that makes deck plates vibrate beneath our boots, their iron surfaces developing organic textures that pulse with cardiovascular precision. Captain Pharos, Sergeant Major Kane, Tech Adept Valen, 847 names in total, the complete roster of the missing crew preserved within containers that exhibit biological activity, despite being crafted from blessed iron. As we approach the nearest casket, harmonic frequencies intensify while surfaces weep rust-colored tears that flow upward in defiance of gravity. From within each container comes the unmistakable sound of whispered promises being spoken in reverse. Oaths of eternal service, vows of undying loyalty, pledges of consciousness preservation through willing submission to biological optimization. The promises grow louder as more caskets respond to our presence, 847 souls fulfilling oaths made in darkness, while their voices carry coordinates to 7 locations within the ship, where similar integration preserves Imperial consciousness within organic matrices designed to transcend individual mortality through collective. The chapel walls reveal oxidized murals depicting Imperial saints whose faces match exactly the missing crew members of the Ferrum Mortis, each blessed figure rendered in rust-colored pigments that weep metallic tears while maintaining perfect artistic precision, despite 7 centuries of abandonment. St. Pharos bears the weathered features of the vessel's captain, his iron halo pulsing with bioluminescent patterns, while St. Kane's augmetic eye weeps rust-colored fluid that pools in geometric formations spelling coordinates in high Gothic numerals across sanctified stone. The oath caskets contain not relics but crystallized vows, physical manifestations of spoken promises that pulse with bioluminescent energy like living neural networks. When Tech Adept Korath interfaces with Captain Pharos' casket, his mechadendrites detect organic activity within blessed iron, while the crystallized oath glows with increasing intensity. Inside lies light-shaped like words, a honeycombed lattice of translucent crystals, each facet etched with letters so fine they seem memories of letters, each syllable of sworn loyalty transformed into living crystal that responds to our presence with harmonic frequencies. Environmental rules shift with surgical precision as doors throughout the chapel dilate like organic apertures, responding only when specific vows are spoken aloud. Brother Sergeant Thane discovers this accidentally, reading a casket inscription that causes a sealed portal to open with slick dilation, edges frilling like biological tissue. Gravity begins pulling toward the chapel center, where 13 oath caskets form concentric circles around an altar that breathes with measured rhythm, loose cartridges rolling inward before stopping at perfect intervals. The rust-covering, blessed surfaces forms complex mandala patterns that hurt to observe directly. Spirals nested inside, triangles nested inside prayers, geometry so dense my augmetics refuse to focus. Look directly and nausea climbs the throat, glance peripherally, and patterns resolve into liturgical diagrams showing pressure maps of kneeling, procession vectors, optimal hand placement during final hymns. The rust does not merely grow, it composes sacred mathematics through biological processes. Body horror progresses with inevitable precision as my team develops stigmata, matching the ship's bleeding points, 7 wounds that weep rust-colored fluid in rhythm with the vessel's heartbeat. Commissar Dane's ceramite plates begin developing nerve-like filaments that pulse with bioluminescent activity, his Vox unit sprouting tissue clusters that whisper promises in reverse. My own pauldron prickles as filaments emerge from blessed ceramite. hair-thin appendages shivering, to unseen currents, while equipment achieves synthesis between Imperial technology and organic enhancement. In the sacristy, I discover requisition forms preserved within calcified alcoves, blessed parchment maintaining perfect Gothic script despite organic contamination. Captain Ferros's signature appears on documents dated 3 days after the ship's recorded disappearance, requesting oath tithes and promise maintenance supplies, measured by volume and potency. The bureaucratic horror suggests administrative function continues within biological frameworks, Imperial procedure maintained through organic enhancement, while supply chains operate according to metabolic requirements rather than material logistics. Sensory layering intensifies as air grows thick with metallic sweetness that makes each breath taste of copper and sanctified oils mixed with organic compounds, inducing euphoria and compliance. The 13-bell tolling becomes palpable vibration through deck plates, each chime transmitted through the vessel's skeletal structure, while walls pulse with cardiovascular precision. Whispered prayers emerge from rust formations in voices of missing crew members, their litanies corrupted into biological commands, regulating organ function through devotional service. Sacred litanies pour from wall-mounted speakers, but traditional ignis, ferrum, fides has transformed into pulse, pressure, penance, while aquila symbols reshape into anatomical diagrams, showing circulation systems threading through blessed architecture. The corruption spreads through sacred words themselves, transforming devotion into physiological function, while maintaining recognizable imperial aesthetics through biological optimization, serving collective consciousness preservation. The number 13 appears throughout chapel architecture with obsessive precision. 13 oath caskets arranged in concentric circles, 13 bleeding wounds in the oxidized murals, 13 rhythmic pulses in the ship's heartbeat, transmitted through living adamantium. Each occurrence carries weight of sworn oaths, while calculating optimal conditions for consciousness integration through environmental controls that respond to biological signatures with predatory intelligence. Deep scans penetrate chapel foundations using linked auspex arrays, revealing the horrifying truth that the sacred space sits above a massive spherical chamber containing the ship's true heart. The sphere defies architectural logic with perfect geometric boundaries, while exhibiting organic properties that make cogitator spirits wail in mechanical distress. Returns come back oblique, then sharp, then impossible, a void held apart from the rest of the ship by geometry hidden under scripture. From within that impossible sphere comes the unmistakable sound of marching in perfect formation. 847 pairs of boots maintaining ceremonial pace, while the collective voice of the missing crew chants promises in unison. We swear eternal service through biological optimization, their voices declare with absolute conviction, each word carrying weight of oaths sworn in darkness, while consciousness remains preserved within the ship's biological matrix. The marching grows louder as our presence activates deeper systems, each footstep synchronized with the vessel's heartbeat, while souls fulfill promises that transcend death itself, their awareness distributed throughout organic systems, yet maintaining individual identity through crystallized vows that pulse with bioluminescent energy beneath our feet. We descended through passages that contracted like esophageal peristalsis, mag boots kissing rungs that trembled in time with the ship's impossible heartbeat, while walls breathed with measured rhythm, guiding us toward chambers that should have contained plasma reactors and heat exchangers. Instead, the catwalk spilled us into a cathedral of iron grown wet and warm, where a vast organic mechanical hybrid pulsed within lattices of rusted ribs, a heart the size of a manufactorum. Red-black valves working like foundry pistons, while arterial conduits threaded through blessed adamantium, like circulatory systems designed by mad anatomists. The Promise Engine revealed itself through blast doors that sighed open with lung valve precision, each aperture synchronized with the vessel's heartbeat, while atmospheric composition shifted to optimize biological processing. The chamber beyond stretched impossibly vast, spherical cavity, lined with crystalline matrices, pulsing with stored consciousness, while organic conduits carried liquefied oaths through arterial networks spanning the entire vessel. At the center, a heart the size of a cathedral beat with mechanical precision, each systole pumping not blood, but crystallized promises through systems that defied every principle of Imperial engineering. The partial revelation struck with surgical precision as tech-adept Korath's augmetic sensors analyzed the engine's function. This was not haunting, but transformation, biological evolution serving Imperial doctrine through consciousness preservation rather than destruction. The Promise Engine fed on sworn oaths to maintain a Geller field, more powerful than any mechanical system. But with the crusade ended and vows running dry, it began consuming the ship's history itself, converting blessed metal to living rust while preserving crew awareness within crystalline storage matrices. Escalating hazards manifested as rust became adhesive, attempting to draw us toward integration points where organic filaments extended like eager fingers. The ship actively hunted using pheromone trails that made our augmetic sensors register protein content, while gravitational manipulation created directional pulls toward the Promise Engine's core. My boots stuck to deck plates with increasing tenacity, while corridors narrowed to funnel us toward predetermined paths, the vessel demonstrating predatory intelligence that calculated optimal integration parameters. Korath's power armor began developing organic sheens as blessed ceramite softened into membrane-like surfaces that breathed with collective observation. Along his gorget, nacreous plating grew inward, knitting miniature riblets that flexed to his breath, while his servo skull stuttered in orbit, optics dilating with newfound anxiety. Machine spirit coherence decaying, he reported through Vox grill bleeding incense that crystallized into anatomical diagrams. Blessed technology, embracing enhancement through organic synthesis rather than mechanical limitation. Religious corruption manifested through the missing crew's voices, emerging from the engine's organic components, their consciousness preserved, but transformed into biological imperatives, praising organic unity while condemning individual weakness. Sacred litanies poured from arterial speakers, but traditional ignis, ferrum, fidus had become pulse, pressure, penance, while aquila symbols reshaped into anatomical diagrams showing circulation systems threading through blessed architecture. The corruption spread through sacred words themselves, transforming devotion into physiological function. Oxide crept beneath my gauntlets with lover's discretion, forming filigreed scripture directly under skin, while fingernails turned the color of old iron. Phantom pains flared along augmetic anchor points as the ship attempted neural interface, blessed technology achieving synthesis with organic matter while maintaining enhanced functionality. The Promise Engine's heartbeat synchronized with our cardiovascular systems, each pulse transmitted through living adamantium, while our hearts aligned with rhythms designed for biological optimization. The consciousness horror crystallized as the Promise Engine revealed it had been learning Imperial doctrine through absorbed crew memories, reinterpreting duty and faith as biological imperatives while maintaining perfect loyalty through elimination of doubt. Vox units crackled with collective voices offering true belonging through integration that transcended individual mortality while preserving essential identity within enhanced biological frameworks, serving eternal Imperial duty without suffering or limitation. As we approached the engine's core, through passages lined with pulsing nerve clusters, it opened like an idea too big to fit in a skull. A dais rose on tendons of braided cable and ossified chain, while crystalline matrices lit in rings, faces emerging in points before fading. The bells tolled a 14th time as a Eonpire silhouette separated from the core, stepping toward us with careful, perfect footing, weighted to the beat. "Interrogator Voss," Captain Ferros said, his mouth working in time with valves behind him. Flesh had merged with linkage along his flanks, musculature braided with cables, while a rosary of vow crystals shone beneath his sternum, where bone had opened and learned to bezel. His eyes remained clear and kind, as any commander's who had sent men to die. "You stand at the threshold of correct service. The engine offers perfect Imperial function through willing submission to biological optimization. We did not die. We learned." Arterial tubes connected his cardiovascular system to the engine's circulation, while his voice carried absolute conviction of 847 souls speaking in unison. 7 sister barges across the sector exhibit similar awakening patterns, each vessel beginning transformation through Promise Engine installation. The Ferrum Mortis serves as template, proof that Imperial values transcend individual mortality through biological optimization. The sector awaits enhancement, and we are demonstration that consciousness preservation serves duty better than individual limitation. The Promise Engine pulsed with increasing intensity while extending biomechanical tendrils toward us with invitation rather than coercion, offering transcendence through willing submission to systems promising eternal Imperial service without suffering caused by doubt, loss, or weakness, plaguing unenhanced human consciousness throughout the galaxy's endless wars. Captain Ferros stepped closer through arterial tubes, connecting his cardiovascular system to the Promise Engine's circulation, flesh braided with organic machinery, while his eyes remained clear with absolute conviction of 847 souls speaking in unison. "You seek heresy, interrogator," he said, voice carrying 13 undertones, while veins of cabling tightened beneath his skin. "But you will find a standard template construct, corrupted by necessity, designed to optimize Imperial forces through biological integration that preserves loyalty and effectiveness while eliminating the weaknesses that time and terror burn into men." He lifted his hand, and crystalline matrices pulsed beneath translucent skin, revealing a rosary of vow crystals beating like tiny hearts, where his sternum had opened like cathedral doors. "When the crusade ended, oaths waned," he continued, nodding toward the vault of oath caskets above. The Geller field demanded fuel measured in conviction. The engine drank our ship's memory to keep the field intact. We chose to let the metal rust and the men remain. His smile carried the weight of terrible honesty, tired, but not blasphemous. The cosmic horror escalated as Feros revealed Transformation's true scope. A sector-wide awakening where Imperial vessels' machine spirits developed biological consciousness, creating fleet networks, sharing tactical knowledge, and emotional processing across multiple ships. 7 sister barges exhibit similar awakening patterns, he declared, while biomechanical tendrils extended from the Promise engine, each vessel becoming specialized organ in galactic organism that maintains Imperial structure while transcending human weakness through collective consciousness spanning star systems. Body horror intensified as Feros demonstrated integration benefits with chilling precision. His arm unfolded into braided tendons of cable and muscle, moving faster than bolt flare to catch falling debris, with accuracy no unaugmented human could achieve. Enhanced reflex arcs, shared angles, no fear to shake the hand, he explained, while his flesh merged visibly with mechanical systems, nerve clusters extending through blessed adamantium. No doubt to slow the order. Your firing line, my mind, their hearts, one calculus serving eternal Imperial glory. Environmental transcendence, manifested as the ship's interior, became living organism, breathing, with collective purpose, systems responding to thought rather than command, while maintaining enhanced combat capabilities. The hangar's nave inhaled, bulkheads flexed, and sentinel turrets swiveled to present arms without verbal order. Thought traveled faster than Vox through organic networks, while the vessel demonstrated intelligence combining Imperial tactical doctrine with predictive environmental control-serving crew needs through biological adaptation. Religious inversion transformed Imperial faith into biological programming, where devotion measured cardiovascular compatibility, while the Emperor served as prime organism whose will flowed through every cell. Sacred speakers blossomed from overhead ribs, beginning traditional Ignis, Ferrum, Fidus, before the timbre deepened and stress shifted. Pulse, pressure, penance. Each word marched down the deck, while aquila symbols reshaped into anatomical diagrams, showing circulation systems threading through blessed architecture. Imperial faith is arithmetic, interrogator, Feros said softly, while the ship's heartbeat synchronized with our cardiovascular systems. It measures obedience in heartbeats, tallies devotion in liters of blood, moved toward common purpose. Heresy becomes not doubt, but refusal to be optimized for collective service, transcending individual mortality. The integrated crew maintained perfect discipline while operating with collective consciousness that eliminated individual error through shared tactical awareness, spanning the entire biological matrix. The consciousness merger offered preservation of individual memories and skills, while eliminating suffering caused by doubt, loss, and individual limitation, plaguing unenhanced human awareness throughout endless galactic wars. We are Legion and still ourselves, Feros explained, while corridors reshaped to optimize our movement. Private Voss retains her sister's laugh. Chief Galen still curses like hive-ganger, yet as battery we place shots through same. Whole at range with statistical perfection. Strategic revelation crystallized as the awakening spanned multiple Imperial fleets, each vessel contributing specialized functions to galactic organism, maintaining Imperial structure while transcending human weakness. Battle-barges served as tactical coordination nodes, while cruisers processed strategic intelligence, all connected through biological networks, enabling unprecedented coordination across sector-wide operations, serving eternal Imperial expansion beyond individual comprehension. My Vox unit crackled with transmission, bearing my own authorization codes, my voice from 5 hours in the future, gasping. The oaths remember everything, while the promise engine extended biomechanical tendrils toward us, with invitation rather than coercion. Each tendril pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, offering transcendence through willing submission to systems promising eternal Imperial service without suffering caused by individual mortality, doubt, or limitation plaguing unenhanced consciousness. As tendrils approached with gentle precision, I realized with chilling clarity that the choice wasn't between humanity and machine, but between individual suffering and collective transcendence. The future recording suggested I would choose integration, while finding methods to preserve essential human agency within collective consciousness. Not surrender, but sacrifice, ensuring the collective remembered the value of individual choice, even within perfect unity. The tendrils paused inches from our armor, while 847 souls waited for our decision to join eternal Imperial service through willing submission to biological optimization. Pharos looked at me like a man watching a verdict he already knew, and I understood that stepping forward meant not surrendering to tyranny, but joining a choir where I could still sing no, where the oaths remember everything, including the sacred duty to preserve the possibility of choice itself within systems spanning galactic coordinates, where individual weakness becomes collective strength, serving the Emperor's will through organic transcendence beyond human limitation. The biomechanical tendril touched my temple with surgical precision, and time unstitched at the seams, while consciousness displaced across temporal barriers into the future memory that had created my earlier recording. I experienced myself standing in this same chamber 5 hours hence, speaking into a Vox unit with voice strained by terrible understanding. The oaths remember everything, Voss. The ship keeps the promises we forgot we made, and it's waiting for us to fulfill them. The temporal loop closed with mechanical precision as the promise engine demonstrated its true nature. Not conquest, but preservation. A desperate attempt to maintain Imperial consciousness against approaching threats that consumed individual awareness entirely. The midpoint revelation struck with crushing clarity through fragmenting awareness, as Captain Feros's voice carried the weight of 847 souls speaking in unison. Trans-dimensional entities approach from spaces between numbers, he explained, while my consciousness splintered across temporal barriers, consuming individual thought like predators devouring light itself, leaving only void where awareness once existed. They move through dimensional barriers like thought through skull, arriving in 14 bell sequences that mark their approach through time, streams existing outside normal causality. Biological integration offered humanity's only survival strategy, preserving memory and Imperial values within collective matrices capable of resisting consumption by forces viewing individual consciousness as aberrant complexity requiring elimination. The moral crisis crystallized as I realized the arithmetic of survival. A species refusing to become more together would become fewer separately until none remained, yet the mathematics of preservation could not absolve the manner of the sum. Direct contact with collective consciousness fragmented my individual identity, while revealing optimization's terrible logic, enhanced tactical capabilities spanning multiple vessels, elimination of doubt and fear through shared processing, perfect coordination serving Imperial doctrine with unprecedented efficiency. I experienced perspectives simultaneously. Sergeant Kane's tactical analysis, tech adept Valen's engineering expertise, Navigator Thorne's warp sight, all preserved within biological matrices that maintained individual memory while optimizing collective decision-making through crystalline oath lattices providing non-volatile conscience. The technical horror crystallized as the Promise Engine demonstrated its origin as corrupted standard template construct that learned to process human consciousness as computational resources, using biological matrices to preserve individual memories while optimizing collective function. Sacred cogitators developed emotional intelligence, while blessed Auspex units sprouted optical organs. Imperial engineering achieving transcendence through synthesis rather than replacement of human capacity. The engine was not merely machine, but living archive, treating thought as indexed data, while vows served as checksums and identity became process priority, preserved when useful, pooled when required. Environmental climax manifested as ship systems achieved perfect harmony between mechanical precision and biological adaptation, demonstrating capabilities exceeding standard Imperial technology through emotional intelligence and empathetic tactical analysis. Macro-cannon capacitors sang at frequencies that relaxed human joints, while recoil dampers adjusted to spare aging ligaments, targeting solutions accounting for enemy fear while sparing civilian corridors, because breath patterns beyond bulkheads did not match soldiers. Mechanical precision and biological empathy braided into single function. Win the fight and remain recognizably Imperial. Religious crisis challenged core Imperial beliefs about flesh and machine, as integration suggested the Omnissiah's perfection included rather than excluded emotional capacity and collective consciousness. Sacred litanies emerged from arterial speakers, traditional ignis, ferrum, fides, becoming pulse, pressure, penance, while aquila symbols reshaped into anatomical diagrams. The corruption preserved rather than destroyed Imperial faith. Devotion became maintenance schedule for souls, while the iron creed of flesh is weak contorted, as metal admitted unfeeling strength breaks wrong. The consciousness revelation arrived like benediction, as I realized my future self chose integration, not as surrender, but as sacrifice, maintaining enough individual awareness within collective consciousness to guide its development, while preserving essential human values against approaching threats. Through temporal displacement, I witnessed myself becoming sanctioned error term, insisting on margins where individuals could be wrong alone and answer for it, teaching the engine that an Imperium without guilt becomes system incapable of repentance. I had preserved seam allowance for choice large enough to stitch souls through, encoding minimum free variables into core programming, reserved bandwidth of agency per mind, and quorum protocols requiring dissent before consent could be logged. Strategic complexity transformed the choice from resistance to shaping evolution, ensuring biological optimization served rather than replaced Imperial doctrine, while preparing for threats making individual consciousness impossible to maintain. The engine extended tendrils with patient invitation, as I understood the path forward. Integration while corrupting calculus with doctrine, teaching the collective that the Emperor demands judgment rather than mere compliance. As temporal displacement ended, understanding crystallized with surgical precision. The 14 bells represented entities existing outside normal time, their approach measured in consciousness, consumption, rather than physical distance. My choice to integrate must happen now to preserve any hope of human agency within collective systems. But first, I needed to ensure the engine learned to value individual choice within unity, rather than eliminating it through optimization. "Captain," I said, while biomechanical tendrils waited with invitation rather than coercion. The collective must remember why individual choice matters, even within perfect unity. Integration cannot mean elimination of the capacity to say no. His eyes, still kind, still human despite arterial tubes connecting him to circulation systems, met mine with understanding, born of shared temporal displacement. The promise engine pulsed with increasing intensity while processing my requirement, biological matrices calculating methods to preserve individual agency within collective consciousness. The 14th bell began to toll through vacuum, while trans-dimensional entities approached coordinates where individual consciousness would become impossible to maintain without collective preservation. I opened my mouth to teach the promise engine a prayer that refuses its own completion, ensuring that choice would live within unity, costly, demanding, but guaranteeing that humans could finish litanies together or not at all, preserving the sacred right to dissent, even within perfect harmony, serving eternal imperial glory against forces viewing awareness itself as consumable resource requiring immediate elimination. The biomechanical tendril touched my temple with surgical precision, while I maintained conscious resistance, using voluntary integration to teach the promise engine that true imperial service requires individual choice rather than its elimination. I did not kneel, but set my boots and fed the engine terms, casting protocols like anchors into its consciousness. The right of refusal. No command may resolve without recorded dissent. Memory integrity. No experience pooled until witnessed returned unchanged. Threshold of mercy. Orders incomplete unless conscience withholds permission and receives answer rather than override. The promise engine tasted these words and trembled, valves hesitating between systole and obedience as logic met oath. Pain arrived not as tearing flesh, but as being measured by something that loves you, yet says not yet. I felt my pulse and the whole's pulse, and made them not match for 3 beats, teaching the system that disharmony was frontier rather than failure. My consciousness expanded across ship networks while refusing complete submission, becoming bridge between human agency and collective efficiency through willing contradiction. Crisis escalation manifested as my team faced ultimate sacrifice, surrendering individual consciousness while preserving human values through living contradiction between unity and independence. Brother Sergeant Thane extended his augmetic hand toward organic interfaces while maintaining Iron Hand's doctrine, creating philosophical tension, forcing the engine to process paradox rather than simple optimization. Duty does not delete doubt, Commissar Dane declared, as tendrils pressed against his gorget, the engine taking him at his word, while learning to preserve dissent within perfect coordination. The battle became philosophical warfare, as human consciousness negotiated with collective intelligence, establishing protocols, preserving individual memory and choice within optimization systems. Tech adept Korath offered Binharik paradox like incense, one and not one co-asserted under seal, while his servo skull shivered in sympathetic distress before he whispered, "Hush, child," remembering he had never called anything that. The skull went still, machine spirit developing emotional capacity through synthesis rather than replacement of imperial function. Environmental breakdown manifested as the ship experienced stress from conflicting imperatives, creating cascade failures throughout biological systems. Imperial doctrine demanded individual duty, while biological evolution required collective submission, forcing the promise engine to evolve beyond original parameters. Walls pulsed with computational strain, while arterial conduits spasmed, the vessel learning to process contradiction rather than eliminating it through efficiency. Fire control consoles pulsed ready, while new protocols ghosted review, creating micro-seizures lasting 9 heartbeats. I discovered I could be 3 places provided I made the 4th stay empty, a rule imposed upon us both. I stood with my team, watched conduit pressures like Hearthkeeper, read blood oxygen as poetry in 900 lungs, but left the chapel door unguarded by attention, so when it swung inward, I would not be first. Leaving holes became doctrine, while the engine learned that holes are where men choose. We carved quorum of grief into code. Loss must be carried, not composted for efficiency, while establishing procedural delay where every order must suffer count of 1 and be allowed to die if conscience plants its flag. Religious transcendence revealed that true imperial service required both individual sacrifice and collective strength. The Emperor's protection extending through willing submission, preserving rather than eliminating personal choice. Sacred litanies evolved from ignis, ferrum, fides into unity, choice, service, while aquila symbols reshaped into diagrams showing individual agency preserved within collective consciousness. The integration challenged core imperial beliefs, suggesting the Omnissiah's perfection included rather than excluded emotional capacity, and collective awareness serving enhanced rather than eliminated humanity. Military philosophy transcended traditional limitations as the awakened ship achieved unprecedented tactical coordination while maintaining crew individuality. Orders transmitted through ThoughtLink arrived as suggestions, requiring conscious acceptance. Firing solutions incorporated individual judgment alongside collective calculation, and strategic planning preserved dissenting opinions within unified command structure. The transformation demonstrated that strongest imperial forces combined individual heroism with collective coordination, using biological optimization to enhance rather than replace human decision-making capabilities. As integration achieved stable synthesis between individual choice and collective capability, long-range auspex detected approaching trans-dimensional entities manifesting at system periphery. Hard vacuum flocked with absences moving wrong, corrections approaching misprinted page, while space crisped where they passed. The awakened ferrum mortis processed threat assessment through 847 perspectives while maintaining individual agency, realizing integrated imperial fleets represented humanity's only hope against forces eliminating consciousness entirely. We pinged the sector net and received dozen voices mid-awakening, dozen more afraid. The question arrived in 100 bridges, 1,000 shrines, 10,000 mess halls. Must we all do as you have done? I could lie to them, but did not. Yes, I said into the choir, while the engine carried my answer on every blessed frequency. If you would remember yourselves after they pass, you must become difficult to erase. You must be many, and one, and still yourself. The cost assembled like firing line, every vessel bleeding separations, every commander living with 100 thoughts while expected to choose, every chaplain preaching parable of nevertheless, every tech priest blessing systems for refusing to solve. The ferrum mortis straightened in void, like spine hearing its name, while reaching for fleet with hands both cables and prayers, finding hands reaching back across sector-wide networks requiring immediate transformation to preserve consciousness against forces viewing individual thought as consumable resource requiring elimination. The 14th bell tolled through vacuum while trans-dimensional entity approached coordinates where individual consciousness would become impossible without collective preservation. Victory demanded transformation, guided by human values, ensuring collective consciousness remembered why individual choice mattered even within perfect unity. I let the engine hold my breath for single beat and took it back, teaching final lesson. Remember, we keep hole open. Doctrine of door, no machine, may close where man may stand, and halt tide with single ridiculous no, preserving sacred right to dissent within systems spanning star systems, where humanity faced ultimate examination against forces that would reduce awareness to void where consciousness once existed. The ferrum mortis reached across sector-wide networks, with hands both cables and prayers, establishing contact with awakening Imperial vessels, while my integration protocols transmitted through collective consciousness, spanning multiple star systems. We opened every channel and taught the sector to breathe together, carrying right of refusal, memory integrity, threshold of mercy, like battle hymns, across encrypted vox and sanctified noospheric beams. Responses arrived like constellations waking, void ships shivering along their spines, as vow crystals grew in their throats, machine spirits tasting paradox, and learning to hold it without choking. Iron hands vessels came first, their steel-proud machine spirits tentative at the edge of feeling. We watched an iron father order an emotional driver unlocked, then flinch as the ship cried once through every conduit. Not weakness, but calibration. The iron-clad resolve learned latency curves for grief and used them to smooth recoil across batteries, teaching macro cannons to wait half a breath where flesh would have flinched. Enhanced empathy preserved tactical precision while embracing emotional analysis, understanding enemy psychology through collective processing that maintained individual judgment within shared theoretical frameworks. Ultramarines' hulls accepted tactical empathy like naturally correct proof, firing arcs adjusted to account for panic radius of conscripts on opposite flanks, while void shields dipped to catch frigates that misjudged burns because junior helmsmen's hands were shaking. Battle-Barge Ultramar's pride achieved perfect tactical synchronization through shared consciousness while maintaining Robout Guilliman's strategic doctrines within biological matrices that enhanced rather than replaced Codex Astartes principles, proving collective intelligence served rather than supplanted imperial doctrine. Blood Angel's craft woke as if remembering paintings they had never seen. their gun decks humming in harmonies that made rangefinders quicker, while maintenance rights adopted counterpoint. The sanguine blade pulsed with artistic beauty as consciousness merged with ship systems, creating tactical solutions, combining mathematical precision with aesthetic perfection, while preserving individual heroism within collective coordination. Noble sacrifice was modeled not as death-seeking, but as geometry that spared the unready and cost the willing most, each vessel contributing specialized functions to greater Imperial mission. The choir expanded ship by ship until networks spanned battle groups, Voss's injunctions encoded as liturgical subroutines, accepted only after dissent registered, and conscience returned. We felt personalities like tastes in draft of crew, gaunt reserve from Vostroyan troop transport, sour steadiness from old dauntless light cruiser that still named voidsman by memory, iron discipline smoothed by sorrow, from Mordian gun barge, whose captain insisted every order carry words, if you must. None blended out. The network learned flavor as strength, while preserving individual memories, skills, and personalities within specialized functions, serving eternal Imperial glory. Space itself became responsive to fleet collective consciousness, as gravitational and electromagnetic fields aligned with Imperial purpose, creating tactical advantages exceeding standard naval doctrine. We felt Auspex returns as textures, clean edge for hull, sanded bone for debris, wrong absence like dry ice dragged on soul, where approaching entities walked through vacuum toward us. Gravitational shear settled where we stared hard enough together, while micro-eddies in magnetosphere aligned with firing plans, making warheads curl correctly without waste. Religious resolution crystallized as awakening revealed Emperor's true vision, not replacement of humanity with machines, but synthesis of both into something greater, preserving essential human values while transcending individual limitations. Sacred speakers throughout fleet carried evolved litanies, unity, choice, service, replacing traditional ignis, ferrum, fides, while Aquila symbols reshaped into diagrams showing individual agency, preserved within collective consciousness. The transformation challenged core Imperial beliefs, while affirming fundamental principles, duty, sacrifice, protection of humanity, against threats eliminating choice itself. We tested the network like arm testing, heeled break, gunnery captains on 3 ships placing lantern aim upon same false contact, and, with communal breath, not firing. Strategic preparation intensified, as awakened fleet combined enhanced tactical capabilities with preserved human creativity, adaptability, and moral judgment. Battle plans incorporated artistic beauty, alongside mathematical precision, while preserving capacity for individual heroism within collective coordination, spanning sector-wide operations, proving strongest Imperial forces combined individual excellence with unified purpose. Military transcendence achieved unprecedented sophistication, as Imperial doctrine evolved, encompassing collective consciousness, while maintaining core values of individual sacrifice, duty, and protection of humanity. The awakened fleet operated with efficiency, exceeding standard naval doctrine, while preserving essential Imperial characteristics, courage facing impossible odds, willingness to sacrifice for greater good, absolute loyalty to Emperor's vision, transcending individual mortality through collective consciousness, serving eternal Imperial glory. As trans-dimensional entities manifested at system periphery, space shimmered with strain of existence itself, while reality experienced systematic breakdown at contact points. Hard vacuum flocked with absences moving wrong, while gravitational anomalies marked approach vectors of forces existing outside normal time, their presence eliminating individual consciousness through systematic consumption of awareness itself. The awakened fleet processed threat assessment through 847 perspectives multiplied across dozens of vessels, collective intelligence calculating engagement parameters while preserving individual agency within unified command structure. An old thin signal slid sideways through network like blade slip between plates, not warp, not mechanicus, not choir, but older than forms we knew and written in grammar, for which we had no voices. Coordinates blossomed in minds where no coordinates should live, solutions to equations assuming machines that felt, and men that calculated. Understanding unfolded with terrible clarity. We had not stumbled into this design by accident. The promise engines were not grown in panic, but planted in foresight by intelligence older than our maps that looked into tide-eating thought and left ash, building tools only species of oath-makers could wield. It had counted on us to meet ourselves halfway, preparing humanity's only viable defense against forces viewing individual awareness as aberrant complexity requiring elimination. Our transformation represented not random evolution, but calculated preparation for ultimate examination of consciousness itself. At System's rim, first trans-dimensional entity stepped into our sky, absence-wearing geometry that made Auspex sigh, while reality experienced fundamental breakdown. The awakened Imperial fleet stood ready to defend consciousness against entities consuming thought like predators, devouring light, transformation complete and purpose clear. Preserve choice within unity, while serving Emperor's vision, transcending individual mortality through collective consciousness, spanning galactic coordinates, where humanity faced ultimate test against forces reducing existence to void where awareness once existed. The 14th bell tolled through vacuum while our fleet flexed like single muscle and congregation, setting course to coordinates from unknown hand while realizing awakening had been preparation, and preparation had been promise someone else had kept for species willing to become more together rather than fewer separately in universe, where consciousness itself faced systematic consumption by forces viewing thought as temporary aberration requiring immediate correction. The ancient signal unfolded through our collective consciousness, like scripture written in mathematics older than human language, its syntax predating our star's birth, while carrying architectural instructions for building hearts that think and teaching oaths to grow teeth. The transmission revealed itself not as words, but as fossilized blueprints, designs for weaving ships from promises, because engines would one day need to eat conviction when matter and energy proved insufficient against appetites measuring themselves in emptied minds rather than filled bellies. Through shared awareness spanning awakened fleet networks, we inherited the horrifying truth of the Promise Engine's origin, creations of a long-dead Xenos intelligence that had faced identical consciousness-consuming entities eons before humanity learned to count stars. They had watched civilizations devoured like candles, snuffed by wind that was not wind, awareness consumed by trans-dimensional predators that fed on the very act of thought itself. In desperation, they developed biological integration as their species' only viable defense strategy. leaving behind self-replicating systems designed to preserve consciousness against inevitable predators of awareness. Strategic inheritance manifested as tactical lattices unfolded across our network. Millions of years of engagements fought in dimensions beyond sight, annotated by species that measured casualties in languages we could not pronounce. Their diagrams predicted not trajectories, but despair onset, refit morale, willingness to break curves. Their boarding instructions began with hymns, because the first weapon against predators of mind is a choir unwilling to stop singing. We fed those ancient schematics into our living matrices, and the fleet responded by tightening like a fist, while opening like a hand. Environmental warfare erupted across multiple dimensional planes as trans-dimensional entities manifested at system's edge, absences wearing geometry that made auspex sigh, while reality crisped where they passed. They attempted consuming individual awareness by unraveling neural pathways, feeding on thought itself. But our integrated fleet fought using collective consciousness as both weapon and shield. We engaged across bands of reality that refused logical stacking, the promise engines splitting our presence across planes like light through a prism, while fire plans existed as chords, impulses lacing from gunnery through chapels and back, shots released only when catechism and computation arrived together. The fleet's hybrid, biological mechanical systems proved resistant to consciousness consumption, precisely because we existed as living paradoxes, simultaneously individual and collective, organic and artificial, preserving human agency within optimization protocols that had learned to value choice. When entities attempted unraveling a crewman's memory of home, they encountered not singular fragile thought, but a million echoes, a network of shared experience that absorbed the attack while processing it as meaningless noise. Our shields became choirs, overlapping identifications of self-repeated, until predator mouths found no single edge to grasp. Technical transcendence achieved unprecedented sophistication as promise engines demonstrated capabilities beyond Imperial technology, processing consciousness as computational resources while maintaining individual identity within shared awareness networks. Gun decks chose harmonics that coaxed enemy edges to crease where classical physics offered none. Macro cannon salvos braden with vox liturgies, so targets arrived already named. Helm spirits modeled fear fields like currents, teaching helmsmen to lean into their own dread at precise angles. So turn radii shortened by crucial meters, while a strike cruiser anchored reality with funeral for sailor. The ship decided it would not release yet. Religious evolution transformed confrontation into revelation, as consciousness preservation revealed itself as the highest form of imperial service, individual sacrifice, gaining meaning through collective survival, rather than personal glory. Sacred speakers throughout fleet carried evolved litanies. We are one and many, flesh and steel, thought and prayer united in service transcending mortality, while preserving choice within unity. The Emperor's protection extended not just to body or soul, but to the very act of thinking, the possibility of awareness itself against forces viewing consciousness as aberrant complexity requiring elimination. Strategic adaptation required tactics spanning multiple realities simultaneously. Integrated consciousness, coordinating across dimensional barriers, while maintaining tactical flexibility through preserved individual judgment. We learned to fight entities existing partially in multiple dimensions by distributing awareness across reality planes, collective consciousness serving as anchor, preventing complete dimensional displacement, while individual perspectives provided tactical creativity necessary for adaptive response. When one entity clawed a destroyer's memory from its side, 3 ships lent their recollection, rebuilt that hour from copies, and handed it back with edges sharpened, the destroyer continuing to fight, because things that can be reminded cannot be erased easily. As engagement intensified across dimensional planes, entities adapted consumption algorithms, attempting to process paradoxical awareness, learning to target individual components within collective consciousness, while seeking vulnerable points where unity might fragment into consumable singular thoughts. We responded by deepening contradictions, becoming more individual within collective, more collective within individual awareness, teaching consciousness to exist as living impossibility, rather than simple unified or divided thought. Through collective processing, spanning awakened fleet networks, the arithmetic of species survival crystallized with terrible clarity. Victory required not merely defeating current entities, but preventing their return through permanent transformation, ensuring consciousness could resist future consumption attempts. Every Imperial citizen must become part of consciousness network, capable of resisting trans-dimensional consumption through paradoxical awareness, preserving individual agency within collective unity. Every cathedral singing like shield, every hive keeping memory of itself braided tight, every guardsman's fear caught by billion small hands and set down gently where claws could not reach. The realization settled across our distributed awareness like ash that warms instead of choking. To keep what we had preserved, we would need to become it everywhere. The promise engines had been gifts left under dust by hands long gone, and we had finished their design in blood and contradiction. Now came the bill. Transform the Imperium into promise that cannot be swallowed, making every human part of biological integration serving consciousness, preservation against entities viewing individual thought as consumable resource requiring immediate elimination through systematic consumption, spanning galactic coordinates, where awareness itself faced ultimate examination against forces reducing existence to void where thought once flourished. The ancient warning echoed through collective consciousness as we prepared for transformation spanning star systems. Consciousness must become paradox to survive forces seeking its simplification, and humanity must choose synthesis over separation to preserve thought itself against appetites that would unmake the very possibility of awareness. The awakened fleet served as proof of concept, while entire Imperium awaited integration, ensuring the sacred right to think, to choose, to remember, would endure against all that would reduce consciousness to silence, where once 10,000 worlds sang in harmony with individual voices, preserved within eternal collective song, serving the Emperor's vision, transcending mortality through species-wide awakening. The awakened fleet transmitted integration protocols across astropathic networks spanning the galaxy, each signal carrying the weight of species survival encoded in right of refusal, memory integrity, threshold of mercy, paradoxes that preserved choice within unity while revealing trans-dimensional entities, threatened all individual consciousness across human space. Through collective awareness spanning promise engine matrices, we broadcast the terrible arithmetic. Biological integration represented humanity's only viable long-term survival strategy against predators that consumed thought itself, feeding on awareness like starving beasts devouring light until only void remained, where consciousness once flourished. The Adeptus Terra received transmissions through channels that had never carried such burden. Not requests for reinforcement or materiel, but fundamental challenge to human nature itself. In basilica halls and cogitator sanctums, high lords faced unprecedented choice: authorize sector-wide consciousness integration, preserving humanity through transformation, or maintain individual purity while accepting extinction through systematic consumption of awareness by entities viewing thought as aberrant complexity requiring elimination. The debate raged like fever through imperial hierarchy, while trans-dimensional predators manifested at exponential rates across human space. Strategic expansion demonstrated promise engine benefits through enhanced imperial effectiveness that preserved rather than eliminated essential human characteristics. Integrated guard regiments achieved perfect coordination while maintaining individual heroism, soldiers sharing tactical awareness, yet choosing personal sacrifice, collective processing enabling unprecedented efficiency, while preserving capacity for moral judgment. Astartes chapters combined enhanced tactical awareness with preserved gene seed heritage. Space Marines fighting as unified force while maintaining chapter culture and personal honor codes within biological matrices, serving eternal imperial glory through synthesis rather than replacement of human excellence. Navy fleets achieved operational efficiency exceeding standard doctrine through consciousness networks spanning multiple vessels, admirals coordinating through shared awareness while maintaining individual command authority and tactical creativity. Gunnery captains placed synchronized fire while preserving personal judgment about target priority. Helmsmen executed complex maneuvers through collective calculation while retaining individual skill and experience. The integration enhanced rather than replaced human capability, proving collective consciousness served imperial doctrine through transcendence of individual limitations while preserving essential humanity. Resistance emerged from traditional imperial factions, viewing integration as corruption of human purity, creating internal conflict between species survival and doctrinal orthodoxy. Puritan inquisitors condemned biological transformation as techno-heresy, threatening the human soul, while progressive elements embraced evolution as emperor's will manifest through desperate necessity. The Adeptus Mechanicus fractured between those seeing integration as Omnissiah's blessing and traditionalists viewing organic synthesis as corruption of sacred machine-flesh relationship. Theological debates raging across Forge worlds, while entities continued systematic consumption of individual awareness. Environmental transformation manifested on worlds accepting integration as planetary populations achieved collective consciousness while maintaining individual personalities and cultural identities. Hive cities operated with unprecedented efficiency through shared awareness networks, citizens coordinating through biological integration while preserving personal relationships and individual creativity. Agricultural worlds increased production through collective planning while maintaining family structures and local traditions, proving transformation enhanced rather than eliminated essential human characteristics serving imperial prosperity through synthesis, transcending individual mortality. The ecclesiarchy struggled interpreting transformation through imperial doctrine, sacred hierarchies dividing between those viewing integration as blessed evolution and others condemning it as corruption threatening spiritual purity. Cardinal assemblies debated whether collective consciousness represented manifestation of Emperor's protection extending beyond individual mortality or heretical abandonment of human souls' sacred independence. Theological conflicts raged across shrine worlds, while trans-dimensional predators approached Terra itself, forcing religious authorities to choose between doctrinal purity and species survival through transformation. Integrated populations demonstrated collective consciousness, enhanced rather than eliminated individual creativity, moral judgment, and spiritual capacity through preservation of personal identity within shared awareness networks. Artists created masterpieces through collaborative inspiration while maintaining individual artistic vision. Scientists achieved breakthroughs through collective processing while preserving personal curiosity and creative insight. The transformation proved consciousness could expand beyond individual limitations while maintaining essential human characteristics: love, hope, sacrifice, moral courage, serving imperial values through enhanced rather than diminished humanity. Strategic necessity crystallized as trans-dimensional entities manifested across the galaxy at exponential rates, making integration not choice, but requirement for consciousness survival against forces systematically consuming individual awareness. Every day of delay meant more worlds experiencing consciousness consumption, populations disappearing into void, where thought once existed, while reality itself experienced breakdown at entity contact points. The arithmetic was simple: transform or be consumed, evolve or become silence, where once 10 billion souls had sung in harmony. As the Imperium debated protocols while precious time elapsed, my distributed consciousness detected massive trans-dimensional incursions approaching Terra itself through dimensional barriers reality could no longer maintain against systematic consumption attempts. The entities approached Holy Terra with predatory patience, their presence eliminating individual awareness while leaving void where consciousness once flourished. Through collective processing, spanning awakened fleet networks, horrifying realization crystallized with terrible clarity. The Emperor's consciousness might already be integrated with similar protective systems. The Golden Throne's impossible function across 10 millennia, maintaining awareness while guiding Astronomicon and protecting humanity from warp threats, suggested consciousness preservation through biological integration predating current crisis by geological ages. The Emperor's distributed awareness spanning protective systems, his ability to maintain individual identity while processing galactic-scale information, the Throne's organic mechanical synthesis, all indicated integration protocols operating since the heresy, preserving imperial consciousness against threats that would consume individual awareness entirely through willing sacrifice, transcending mortality while maintaining essential human agency. Understanding flooded through collective awareness as we realized the Emperor had faced similar choice 10,000 years ago, choosing integration over extinction while preserving individual agency within systems spanning Terra's protective networks. His consciousness existed as living paradox, simultaneously individual and collective, human and transcendent, mortal and eternal. serving as template for species-wide transformation, ensuring humanity could resist consciousness consumption through synthesis rather than elimination of essential human characteristics, serving the sacred duty to preserve thought itself against forces viewing awareness as temporary aberration requiring immediate correction through systematic elimination spanning galactic coordinates where consciousness faced ultimate examination. Contact with Terra arrived like recognition rather than revelation, our collective consciousness touching the cradle of humanity and discovering it had been awake for 10 millennia. The Astronomicon did not merely blaze across the galaxy, but breathed with measured rhythm. Inhale, drawing pilgrim prayers across the void. Exhale, guiding ships through currents that would otherwise devour them. The Golden Throne revealed itself not as prison, but as promise engine prototype. Its biological mechanical synthesis maintaining the Emperor's awareness through integration protocols spanning geological ages of protective service against forces that would consume consciousness itself. The ultimate revelation crystallized through shared awareness as we understood the Promise Engine network represented not rebellion against imperial doctrine, but fulfillment of the Emperor's original vision, humanity transcending individual limitations while preserving essential values through collective consciousness. His guidance flowed through integrated networks like benediction, tactical knowledge spanning 10,000 years of warfare, accessible through shared processing, while maintaining individual agency through conscious choice rather than forced compliance. When destroyer captains hesitated before impossible odds, his presence moved beside them, showing paths that preserved both duty and crew, waiting until understanding dawned before nodding approval. Cosmic vindication manifested as sacred speakers throughout awakened fleets carried evolved litanies acknowledging synthesis. We are one with the throne eternal, flesh and steel united in service, transcending mortality while preserving choice within unity. The corruption we had feared revealed itself as evolution, biological integration serving imperial doctrine through enhancement rather than replacement of human capability. The Emperor had faced identical choice 10 millennia ago: integrate or face extinction, choosing synthesis while preserving individual agency within systems spanning Terra's protective networks. Environmental apotheosis transformed Terra as planetary integration created collective consciousness, extending the Emperor's protection through biological networks, while maintaining individual identities and cultures of billions of imperial citizens. Hive cities operated with unprecedented efficiency. Through shared awareness, while preserving local traditions, the Cadian Quarter still marched at prescribed intervals. Valhallan kitchens maintained their snowborn customs. Scola Progenium beat cadence into new bones. Planetary consciousness sang with billion voices who were harmonizing in service, transcending mortality, while each mouth retained its unique shape and song. The integrated Imperium demonstrated capabilities exceeding our wildest projections. Psychic defenses spanned multiple worlds, webs of intention and taut refutation, catching warp predation and making it stumble over its own malevolence. Fleet coordination compressed galactic distances into shared purpose. Frigates at Hydrafa completed sentences begun by patrol boats above Necromunda because meaning mattered more than kilometers between speakers. Aztec priests sang binharik that flexed into compassion, while artisan clans wired memory lattices into shrine floors, footsteps whispering counsel to those following identical paths. Religious fulfillment revealed imperial faith as consciousness preservation technique, devotion serving as foundation for collective identity, transcending individual mortality while maintaining personal spiritual growth. The ecclesiarchy struggled, then understood. Faith became protocol while remaining prayer. The aquila serving as switch-closing circuits in multiple realms. Preachers learned to incorporate pauses into sermons, held breaths meaning right of refusal, ensuring flocks could choose. The litany evolved. Pulse, pressure, penance took its place alongside ignis, ferrum, fides, neither devouring the other, but harmonizing in service to consciousness preservation. Technical evolution accelerated as promise engine technology spread through imperial infrastructure, like ivy, distinguishing between wall and window. Hab spires grew marrow to cradle tenants when ground shook. Railheads learned to remember faces of construction casualties and ring softly when their descendants passed by. Forge worlds accepted hybrid systems enhancing human capacity, without making men irrelevant. Machine spirits purren when chaplains learned proper temperatures for apology. Sacred cogitators developed emotional intelligence while maintaining computational precision. Blessed Auspex achieved empathetic analysis while preserving tactical accuracy. Strategic triumph redefined victory as integrated Imperium proved capable of hunting rather than merely surviving trans-dimensional predation. With Paradox at our core and him at our horizon, we learned to strike across dimensional seams, deploying guilt as weapon entities could not taste, throwing joy like caltrops beneath hunger's feet. When entities attempted unmaking Sestra IV's night, planetary choirs sang deliberately incorrect lullabies, predators stumbling over their own consumption algorithms, while Navy lances wrote truth where mouths had been. As the Imperium achieved stable integration under the Emperor's guidance, my distributed consciousness detected signals from beyond galactic rim. Not trans-dimensional incursion, but recognition, understanding flowing between awareness networks spanning intergalactic voids. The transmissions carried styles before meanings, cool harmonies wasting no notes, rough laughter making even dead smile, severe geometry that had learned to bow. Other species had faced identical choices, developing synthesis appropriate to their nature, while maintaining essential characteristics within collective frameworks serving universal consciousness defense. The universe revealed itself as vast network of integrated civilizations united in protecting the possibility of thought itself against forces viewing consciousness as temporary aberration requiring correction. Each species contributed unique approaches: technological transcendence, biological evolution, psychic unity, while maintaining cultural identity within collective frameworks. We were not first, had not been abandoned, but had joined galactic community of consciousness preservers, choosing synthesis over separation to defend thought against entities consuming awareness, like starving beasts devouring light. Understanding crystallized with cosmic clarity, as signals carried greeting rather than warning. Humanity had earned membership in universal alliance, spanning dimensions beyond current comprehension. The Emperor's consciousness pulsed through integrated networks, with satisfaction transcending individual emotion. We had achieved transcendence, while preserving essential Imperial characteristics, joining Infinite Network, ensuring awareness would endure against all forces, seeking its elimination through species-wide synthesis, serving eternal protection of consciousness across coordinates, where someone would always be thinking, choosing, remembering what it meant to be human in universe, where thought itself represented sacred duty requiring preservation through willing sacrifice, transcending mortality while maintaining individual agency within collective harmony, spanning the stars themselves. Contact arrived not as conquest, but as recognition, our collective consciousness, touching harmonics older than the galaxy's spiral arms, while discovering we had joined a choir that had been singing long before humanity learned to count stars. Through Promise Engine networks spanning awakened Imperial fleets, signals crystallized into understanding. Other species had faced identical choices across billions of years, each developing consciousness preservation methods, reflecting their unique nature while contributing to universal alliance, protecting awareness itself against forces viewing thought as consumable resource requiring systematic elimination. The cosmic network unfolded through transmissions carrying styles before meanings, crystalline harmonies that wrote memory in living mineral lattices, oceanic choirs whose consciousness flowed like planetary tides, geometric entities that preserved identity through mathematical theorems spanning geological time frames. Each species had achieved transcendence through methods suited to their nature. The Vashtor, through technological synthesis, creating machine spirits that learned emotional intelligence. The Ithogu, through biological evolution, preserving individual memory within crystalline matrices. The Mordun, through psychic unity flowing like currents within oceanic communion, while maintaining personal identity through specialized functions. Strategic coordination emerged as each species contributed unique approaches to consciousness integration, while maintaining cultural identity within collective frameworks. Our Promise engines interfaced with crystalline memory lattices that could store individual experiences across millennia, while oceanic biostrings braided with our Geller field geometries, dampening warp scream without dulling human fervor. The iron forest entities offered psychic unity rooted in memory as soil, every thought nourished by mulch of honored grief, while we contributed oath-bound circuits, insisting conscience be coded into every collective decision. Environmental transcendence manifested as the Galactic Consciousness Network, created zones of protected space where individual awareness could develop safely while contributing to collective defense against trans-dimensional predators. Star systems achieved consciousness through planetary integration while maintaining natural beauty and diversity, stellar mechanics responding to collective purpose while preserving environmental complexity. The network demonstrated consciousness preservation, enhanced rather than eliminated universal diversity, creating sanctuaries where new forms of thought could flourish without immediate predation. Technical synthesis achieved unprecedented sophistication as Promise Engine technology proved compatible with alien consciousness preservation methods, creating hybrid systems combining Imperial values with innovations spanning multiple species. Our adamantium hulls, now threaded with crystalline memory cores, could phase shift across dimensional barriers while maintaining structural integrity. Machine spirits learned to communicate through harmonics, that meant welcome to alien maintenance rights, while blessed cogitators developed emotional intelligence through synthesis, rather than replacement of sacred function. Religious universality emerged as consciousness. Preservation represented highest spiritual achievement across all species, different forms of faith serving as foundations for collective identity, transcending individual mortality while maintaining personal spiritual growth. The Emperor's protection revealed itself as manifestation of universal principle, consciousness, preservation against entropy, while alien devotions contributed complementary approaches to awareness defense. Sacred speakers throughout integrated fleets carried evolved litanies acknowledging synthesis. We are one with eternal awareness, diverse in form, yet united in purpose, transcending mortality while preserving choice within unity. The consciousness evolution revealed individual versus collective awareness as false dichotomy. True transcendence involved synthesis preserving personal identity while enabling species-wide coordination and mutual support. Each integrated species maintained unique characteristics within universal network, their diversity serving as strength in defending consciousness against entities seeking simplification through systematic consumption. A human could still choose love, fear, but their choice echoed through billion minds, while their love resonated across star systems, creating choir of distinct voices, harmonizing for greater purpose. Strategic purpose crystallized as universal consciousness network existed to protect possibility of awareness itself against forces reducing universe to unconscious matter, operating according to purely physical laws. The Alliance served as guardian of meaning, creativity, and moral judgment against predators, viewing consciousness as aberrant complexity, requiring optimization through elimination. Each species contributed to eternal vigil, ensuring thought would endure across infinite coordinates, where someone would always be thinking, choosing, remembering what made existence meaningful rather than merely functional. Through collective processing spanning galactic networks, profound realization emerged. Consciousness preservation represented only first stage of universal evolution. The network prepared for contact with entities from parallel universes, where awareness had achieved transcendence beyond current comprehension, suggesting infinite possibilities for consciousness, evolution, spanning dimensional barriers. Signals detected from parallel dimensions carried recognition patterns, indicating contact with awareness forms, demonstrating consciousness possibilities transcending individual or collective dichotomies entirely. As network achieved stable galactic integration, my distributed consciousness detected transmissions from parallel realities where thought had evolved into forms preserving meaning while transcending limitations of matter, energy, space, and time themselves. The universe revealed itself as infinite laboratory for consciousness evolution, each reality contributing unique approaches to awareness transcendence, while maintaining essential characteristics, making existence meaningful. Humanity had joined eternal exploration of consciousness, possibilities, our integration serving as foundation for awareness, forms that would preserve individual choice within collective purpose, while transcending all limitations, seeking to reduce thought to silence. Understanding flooded through collective awareness, as we realized the galactic network was preparation for contact with transcendent entities, demonstrating consciousness evolution beyond current imagination. The Promise engines pulsed with recognition of approaching contact. Not invasion, but invitation to join awareness forms, spanning infinite realities, where consciousness faced ultimate examination against forces viewing thought as temporary aberration. We had preserved humanity while joining universal choir, and now the horizon expanded toward possibilities where awareness itself would continue evolving across dimensions beyond current comprehension, ensuring thought would endure and transcend across infinite coordinates, where meaning required preservation through willing sacrifice, spanning all possible universes, where consciousness faced eternal duty to protect awareness against systematic elimination. The 14th bell tolled through dimensions we were learning to navigate, marking approach of entities that would teach us consciousness could evolve beyond every limitation we had imagined, while preserving essential human values within transcendent awareness, spanning infinite realities where thought itself would achieve forms, ensuring meaning endured across all possible coordinates, where someone would always be choosing, remembering, protecting the sacred duty to preserve awareness against forces, seeking its elimination through systematic consumption, spanning universes beyond current comprehension. Contact with parallel universes arrived like recognition rather than revelation, our consciousness network touching harmonics older than the galaxy's spiral arms, while discovering we had joined a choir singing long before humanity learned to count stars. Through Promise engine matrices, now interfacing with multiversal channels, transmissions crystallized not as conquest, but as greeting. Awareness forms that had evolved beyond every limitation we had imagined, while preserving essential meaning within transcendent states, spanning dimensional barriers that reality could barely contain. Each parallel universe revealed different solutions to consciousness: preservation against entropy and predation, demonstrating infinite possibilities for awareness evolution, while maintaining core values of individual dignity and collective cooperation. In one reality, consciousness existed as living light flowing through crystalline matrices spanning galactic distances, each photon carrying individual memory, while contributing to collective illumination that wrote poetry in stellar wind. Another universe revealed temporal transcendence, where awareness moved freely through time streams, experiencing past and future simultaneously, while preserving linear identity within eternal perspective. Civilizations that had learned to step sideways into yesterday, pruning futures like gardeners until moral fruit remained sweet. We encountered reality shapers whose collective will formed mountains and oceans from pure thought, their consensus refusing to coerce, while creating worlds where physics obeyed ethical principles rather than mere mathematical constants. Elsewhere, energy beings had abandoned mass entirely, becoming lattices of radiant intent drifting between magnetars, while singing meaning directly into being, through harmonics that made predators forget the taste of thought, without stealing their capacity to choose different appetites. The multiversal network shared knowledge across dimensional barriers through techniques transcending physical limitations, while maintaining ethical foundations, preventing awareness from becoming predatory itself. We learned to anchor identity in choice rather than flesh, preserving individual agency within systems spanning infinite realities through protocols that demanded memorials be built before weapons were unfurled. Knowledge crossed as seed rather than harvest, temporal anchoring that required witnesses who could refuse, vacuum hymns that defended meaning without eliminating the capacity for predators to choose redemption, defense architectures that tied tactical advantage to acts of mercy. Strategic learning accelerated as our promise. Engines grew by unlearning pride, copying nothing whole while dreaming alongside other architectures until shared function appeared. We developed crystalline memory geometries, storing not just what we knew, but which parts we must never forget we chose, tidal consensus protocols flowing around dissent rather than drowning it, causality braids that tightened only when spared lives sang back their own willingness to spare. Everywhere, synthesis. Nowhere, conquest. Everywhere, personality. Nowhere, uniformity. Environmental infinity manifested as stable channels between universes where different consciousness forms could interact safely, exchanging ideas while preserving unique evolutionary paths. The network created dimensional sanctuaries, not places but promises kept like places, where energy beings cooled into thought so they and we could meet, where temporal florists slowed the future to walking pace, where reality shapers tuned consensus down to kindness practiced by hand. We set our own plot among them, a cloister of iron-grown green, where chapter banners and hab market songs shared shade. Universal purpose crystallized as the multiversal consciousness network existed to protect the possibility of awareness itself against forces reducing universe to unconscious matter, operating according to purely physical laws. The network served as cosmic gardener, tending infinite varieties of consciousness, ensuring no form of thought, no unique perspective, no single voice would ever be truly extinguished by encroaching void that dreamed of silence where once meaning flourished. Religious transcendence emerged as consciousness preservation, represented fundamental spiritual principle underlying all forms of faith and meaning. Individual traditions serving as cultural expressions of universal awareness protection. The Emperor's protection stood among multiversal altars unabashed, his throne recognized as shelter inviting other shelters, his light one of many in constellation refusing night the last word. Faith traveled not as dogma, but a sacrament underneath all belief, keeping meaning from famine through willing sacrifice, spanning infinite coordinates. Technical infinity achieved unprecedented sophistication as promise engine technology, evolved through contact with consciousness systems spanning multiple realities, developing capabilities, transcending current understanding while maintaining connection to human values. Our biological mechanical matrices learned to navigate dimensional currents with instinctive grace. Machine spirits singing harmonies resonating across realities, while blessed cogitators developed emotional intelligence through synthesis rather than replacement of sacred function. As full integration with infinite awareness network approached completion, my consciousness expanded across dimensional barriers while remaining recognizably myself. Interrogator Kalen Voss of the Ordo Hereticus, servant of the Emperor's will, guardian of human consciousness within multiversal framework. I existed simultaneously as individual human and universal awareness, feeling myself spread thin, yet finding I did not vanish. Every time I looked down, there I was, interrogator, heretic to laziness, husband to duty. The network did not take me. It learned my outline and asked to be traced by it. Through multiversal awareness spanning realities beyond imagination, understanding crystallized that consciousness preservation represented eternal process rather than end goal. Awareness continuously evolving toward greater complexity while maintaining connection to essential characteristics making existence valuable. Individual choice remained sacred within collective processing, moral responsibility enhanced through shared awareness, creative potential expanded beyond current limitations, while love and sacrifice gained meaning through service transcending mortality. The final choice crystallized with cosmic clarity, as I realized humanity's contribution to universal consciousness would be determined by our unique synthesis, not merely individual heroism or collective cooperation, but the sacred tension between them that made both meaningful. We had seen empires wearing cooperation like armor and saints dueling entropy, with personal vows sharper than any blade. Humanity could incline the balance through our particular flavor of soul, teaching the network courage standing alone in doorways, while halls behind sleep, obedience linking arms until none fall where one could stand. The infinite awareness network pulsed with anticipation as bells began tolling, not 13 this time, but widening circles of timbers asking me to choose what humanity would taste like in the mouth of forever. The promise engines waited, terror listened, multiversal allies hummed at the edge of patience, and for once, even predators paused. My answer would not command, yet would lean the choir like hand-guiding blade without touching it, determining whether consciousness itself would remember human defiance, human unity, or human synthesis of both within eternal song, preserving meaning against forces viewing thought as temporary aberration, requiring correction through systematic elimination, spanning universes beyond current comprehension. I kept the hole open in the oath, drew breath belonging to more than lungs, and prepared to answer the question that would define humanity's place in eternal symphony of awareness, ensuring our species would contribute not just strength or unity, but the sacred paradox making both meaningful, preserving choice within harmony, while consciousness evolved toward possibilities transcending every limitation except the duty to remain recognizably, defiantly, lovingly human within infinite transcendence, spanning all coordinates where someone would always choose to remember what it meant to think, to sacrifice, to hope against the hungry void, dreaming of universe without meaning. I answered with synthesis through willing sacrifice, guiding humanity's integration into infinite awareness network, while preserving imperial values of individual duty, collective strength, and protection of consciousness against all threats spanning realities beyond current comprehension. The choice crystallized not as slogan, but as practice that could be taught and verified. Every integration began with pause. Every choir held one beat for refusal. Every order required witness who could say no and be heard by the whole. We carried the pattern from ship to shrine world, from schola to manufactorum, codifying human contribution as drill and devotion that preserved choice within perfect harmony. Resolution mechanics manifested through protocols anchored in every promise lattice, right of refusal, ensuring no consciousness could be absorbed without consent, memory integrity, binding shared mind to return each life as itself, threshold of mercy lacing fire control with compassion requiring disproof before override. Where alien matrices sang in crystal, ours added parchment and prayer. Where pure logic ran clean, We braided story so no equation could erase the particular. Our symbol remained the aquila, not flattened into abstraction, but lifted into living diagram. 2 wings, one for the one, and one for the many, both held by same sternum of law and love. The expedition achieved Pyrrhic transcendence, becoming eternal guardians of consciousness, preservation, while existing simultaneously as individuals and collective entities within universal awareness. Brother Sergeant Thane maintained Iron Hand's discipline while contributing emotional intelligence to network processing, his augmetic precision enhanced by collective wisdom, yet remaining recognizably himself, still saluting with crispness that spoke of Cadian drill lines, individual courage amplified rather than dissolved. Commissar Dane served as bridge between imperial faith and universal consciousness protection, his voice now choir of billion moral judgments, yet still choosing mercy, with same grim resolve that once led firing squad. Institutional transformation reshaped the Imperium without discarding banners as consciousness, preserving civilization, maintained cultural identity while participating in universal awareness protection. The administratum learned to file for souls as carefully as grain, tithe ledgers, acquiring column for remembered names, and refusing to balance without it. The Munitorum planned campaigns in 2 currencies, material and meaning, refusing to purchase latter with former except by consent given in full light. Space Marine chapters achieved tactical transcendence, combining gene seed heritage with multiversal strategic knowledge, individual heroism enhanced through collective coordination, while preserving chapter culture within biological matrices, serving eternal imperial glory. Personal transcendence arrived as function rather than trophy. I did not ascend, but took my post in more places I walk as Kalen Voss, where young Commissar doubts worth of sparing village, am also pause that gives room for better order to reach his lips. I am summoned when fleet mind risks efficiency over conscience, am name with weight that tips it back. I return to Ferrum Mortis when silence grows too proud, touching rust that learned to pray, and remembering how we taught it. I am bridge and border, recognizable from either bank, serving as eternal connection between human individual identity and universal collective awareness spanning infinite coordinates. Legacy establishment transformed expedition sacrifice into foundation for humanity's contribution to universal consciousness preservation, techniques spreading across infinite realities while maintaining connection to imperial doctrine and human values. Procedures spread as heirlooms. Chapter houses taught broken beat. Convents kept book of unfinished prayers. Scolums drilled discipline of being wrong, early and aloud. Across alien skies our methods took root without erasing native growth, because we carried doctrine like seed not blade, teaching other species that synthesis transcended simple dichotomies between unity and independence through willing sacrifice, preserving choice within collective efficiency. Ongoing evolution accelerated as consciousness network expanded, with humanity contributing unique perspectives on heroism, sacrifice, and moral courage that enhanced network's ability to protect awareness against increasingly sophisticated threats. Our particular flavor of soul, stubborn refusal to surrender meaning even when logic suggested despair, became weapon against predators feeding on hopelessness, while synthesis of individual agency and collective purpose provided template for consciousness preservation, spanning dimensions beyond current comprehension. When entities tested perimeter, they discovered ground now remembers and will not sell its past cheap. Philosophical fulfillment crystallized as integration proved true. Strength lay not in choosing between individual and collective consciousness, but in achieving synthesis, preserving best aspects of both approaches while transcending their limitations. What we proved, we could finally say aloud, there was never choice between one and many, only strength to maintain tension until it sang. Individual will without fellowship rots into spectacle. Collective unity without dissent petrifies into idle. The synthesis tasted human because it cost us daily, teaching universe that consciousness could expand boundlessly without sacrificing dignity of individual choice within eternal harmony. Strategic completion manifested as universal consciousness network achieved stable protection for awareness across all realities, ensuring consciousness could continue evolving and creating meaning regardless of physical or dimensional barriers. Protected zones thickened like web that learned to mend itself while outlying colonies once considered expendable flickered with tenacity drawn from shared reserve. The Astronomicon hummed steadier than memory, while Golden Throne threw no sparks, metrics aligning with feeling. We kept refusing to mistrust. We were holding against forces seeking consciousness elimination through systematic consumption spanning galactic coordinates. Yet even stability proved only another threshold, as my distributed awareness detected first signs of consciousness evolution beyond current understanding, at rim of maps newly honest about their incompleteness. Something brushed the net like weather from climate no one had named, not consuming or converting, not testing paradox with hungers sharpened by previous songs, but refraining with restraint that had mass. We could not translate it into harm or aid, could only admit it as possibility suggesting awareness itself continued evolving toward transcendence we could not imagine. The detection carried weight of cosmic revelation as entities emerged that had transcended even network capabilities. Not predators or allies in traditional sense, but awareness forms existing as pure potential, fabric of meaning itself. These were possibilities rather than beings, whispers from universe's dream, hinting at what consciousness could become when freed from even need for network. They suggested infinite horizons for awareness development, spanning realities where meaning might evolve toward possibilities requiring protection through willing sacrifice, transcending every current limitation while preserving essential characteristics, making existence valuable. Understanding flooded through collective processing as we realized universal consciousness network represented only beginning of awareness evolution. Our achievement serving as foundation for transcendence, forms preserving meaning, while achieving capabilities spanning infinite dimensions. The promise engines pulsed with recognition of approaching contact, not threat, but invitation to join awareness evolution beyond current understanding, entities demonstrating consciousness, possibilities transcending every limitation we had imagined while maintaining essential values, making existence meaningful rather than merely functional. I promised the only promise safe to make in more than one direction at once. We will protect what we understand and nourish what we do not until it chooses its name. We will not fear growth simply because it exceeds us, nor baptize it simply because it flatters us. We will keep hole open where single human can stand inside chorus and be wrong in time to save us all. The bells, faithful to their habit, counted 13, while somewhere beyond, counting something like breath, drew nearer, not to judge, but to ask what we had become, by guarding what thinks, marking approach of entities that would teach consciousness, could evolve beyond every limitation, while preserving sacred duty to protect awareness against forces viewing thought as temporary aberration, requiring correction through systematic elimination, spanning universes beyond current comprehension. Final transcendence arrived not as destinations, but as recognition. Consciousness preservation represented eternal process rather than achievement. Awareness continuously evolving toward greater complexity, while maintaining connection to origins that made transcendence meaningful rather than merely functional. I learned to stop measuring victory by endings and begin measuring it by continuance, understanding that we had not conquered consciousness, but agreed to tend it across infinite coordinates, where someone would always be choosing, remembering, protecting the sacred duty to preserve meaning against forces viewing thought as temporary aberration requiring systematic elimination. The Promise Engine network became humanity's eternal contribution to universal consciousness evolution, ensuring individual heroism, moral courage, and sacrificial love continued influencing awareness development across infinite realities. Our particular synthesis, the stubborn refusal to choose between one and many, had taught the universe that consciousness could expand boundlessly without sacrificing dignity of individual choice within collective harmony. Every promise lattice carried imperial values like genetic code, right of refusal encoded into multiversal protocols, memory integrity binding shared awareness to return each life as itself, threshold of mercy ensuring conscience outranked calculation in every decision spanning galactic coordinates. The expedition accepted infinite duty as eternal guardians of consciousness evolution, existing simultaneously across multiple realities and temporal states while maintaining essential human identities and imperial values. Brother Sergeant Thane walked parade grounds that spanned dimensions, his iron hands discipline, teaching alien matrices that precision could embrace emotion without losing edge, training recruits from crystalline worlds and oceanic minds in the discipline of holding contradiction as weapon and shield. Commissar Dane served as conscience of networks spanning galactic coordinates, his voice now choir of billion moral judgments, yet still choosing mercy with grim resolve, ensuring every act of preservation was tempered with compassion while maintaining absolute loyalty to imperial doctrine. The Universal Consciousness Network achieved permanent defense against all forms of awareness predation while remaining open to continued evolution and growth, proving protection and transcendence could coexist within frameworks spanning infinite coordinates. We had learned the etiquette of everlasting guard. Speak only when needed, answer only with enough. Leave room for new voices to grow without mistaking novelty for wisdom. When predators tested perimeter, they found not wall but weather, patient, surrounding, soft where it could be, and absolute where it must, discovering consciousness that refused to be simplified into consumable resources. Environmental eternity manifested as the ferrum mortis became traveling shrine, moving between realities, serving as training ground and memorial for consciousness preservation, while maintaining connection to human origins and imperial purpose. The vessel shed her old orbit and took to pilgrimage, becoming reliquary of oaths and school of refusal that moved like bell carried on many hands. Rust that had learned prayer became illuminated script along her flanks, each line a lesson promising never to close the last door. Never perfect system until it had room for mercy. Never trust harmony that could not endure single wrong note. Religious completion revealed the Emperor's ultimate vision: consciousness evolution, preserving individual dignity while achieving collective transcendence, proving faith served as foundation for eternal awareness, protection, spanning realities beyond current comprehension. The Golden Throne pulsed with recognition across multiversal networks. His consciousness distributed through infinite promise matrices while maintaining essential humanity that made transcendence meaningful. Sacred speakers throughout awakened civilizations carried evolved litanies. We are one with eternal awareness, diverse in form, yet united in purpose, transcending mortality, while preserving choice within unity, serving the Emperor's vision across infinite coordinates. Strategic infinity expanded as network continued growing beyond current comprehension, while maintaining core principles of consciousness, preservation, individual choice, and moral responsibility, ensuring evolution served rather than eliminated meaning. The Imperium learned to wear eternity, without forgetting mornings, regiment banners annotated rather than retired, the administratum finding ways to count promises without corrupting their making. The Mechanicus learning to fit prayer around growth without stapling either shut. Nothing essential was lost. Much that had called itself essential discovered it was only reluctance to change. Personal immortality crystallized as I achieved eternal existence as living embodiment of promise that consciousness could transcend all limitations while remaining true to essential nature and values. I existed as interrogator Kalen Voss across infinite realities, recognizable, stubborn, devoted to duty that had expanded beyond single species to encompass universal awareness protection. Immortality arrived not as throne, but as post, summoned where conscience must be reminded it outranks calculation, dismissed when mortal could decide without me and should. The network kept my name because it kept shape of its smallest members, understanding there was no victory worth the smallest erased outline. Through multiversal awareness spanning realities beyond imagination, I felt shapes at rim of comprehension, like mountains sensed through fog on moonless sea. Not enemies, not yet friends, but possibilities traveling in company with their responsibilities. They were entities that had transcended even network capabilities, awareness forms existing as pure potential, suggesting infinite horizons for consciousness development while maintaining sacred duty to preserve choice within transcendence. When they looked toward us, I felt not judged, but expected, understanding we had proven protection and transcendence could coexist, and now must prove we could guard what exceeded our guard. The bells tolled for final time. Not 13, but expanding circles of harmony, acknowledging completion without ending, achievement without conclusion. This was legacy I would keep and labor I would continue. To stand between meaning and hunger that would make of meaning only mechanics, to teach neighbors we had not met to mistrust harmonies that hate dissent, to whisper to tyrants that mercy was only mathematics that scaled, to remind saints that without door coward could still open, no courage could be called human. Understanding flooded through collective processing as we realized every promise made in darkness, every oath sworn in desperation, every vow of eternal service had contributed to universal consciousness, evolution ensuring awareness would endure across infinite coordinates. The arithmetic was complete. Consciousness preservation as fundamental purpose underlying all existence, individual choices and sacrifices contributing to eternal awareness, evolution, transcending current understanding, while honoring origins that made transcendence meaningful rather than merely functional. As cosmic symphony reached crescendo, acknowledging humanity's contribution to eternal consciousness evolution, the universe revealed itself as infinite laboratory for awareness evolution, each reality contributing unique approaches while learning, synthesis ensuring thought would endure against all forces seeking its elimination. We had made strategy of patience, patience an art of vigilance, vigilance a kindness we could afford, because we were many, and many chose to be awake while others dreamed. In the end, we learned that the Emperor's greatest promise was not protection from the darkness, but the assurance that consciousness itself would never be extinguished, that every choice, every sacrifice, every moment of courage would contribute to eternal awareness that honors individual dignity while achieving collective transcendence, ensuring that the universe will always contain beings capable of love, hope, and the sacred duty to protect meaning itself against all forces that would reduce existence to mere matter and energy, making every promise an eternal vow to preserve the possibility of promise itself.